My son pulled my badge off my belt like I was a shoplifter caught walking out of a Walmart. Then he held it up over his head so the whole showroom could see it. 27 of my own employees stood there and watched him do it. Nobody said a word. My name's Rodney Bradley. 10 minutes earlier, I still believed Bradley Auto Group belonged to me. Ethan didn't lower his voice. He wanted an audience. 40 seconds, everybody. 40 seconds he just stood there blank in front of the Simmons account like somebody unplugged him. A couple of the younger sales guys actually laughed. My own son let them. "You know what we used to call guys like this back at my old dealership?" he said, looking around the room instead of at me. Dead weight with a nameplate on his desk. 3 months back, I had a scare. Chest pain, dizzy spell. The doctor called it a mini stroke and put me on blood thinners. I came back to work 2 weeks later against everybody's advice. Wanted to prove I still had it. Instead, in the middle of pitching the biggest fleet contract in company history, I lost the name of the man across the table. 40 seconds of silence. Ethan took the meeting from there and closed it without me. Turns out he'd been keeping a stopwatch on my decline a lot longer than 40 seconds. He called it an intervention, held it right on the showroom floor in front of the sales team, the mechanics, the 2 teenage lot boys who wash cars on weekends. Cognitive decline, he called it, like he had a medical degree. He sells cars for a living. Then he reached in my shirt pocket in front of everybody and took my company phone out of it. Didn't ask, just took it, the way you'd take toy keys from a toddler having a tantrum. "We'll get you a flip phone, Dad, something simple." Somebody's real phone was already out, recording. Found out later it hit the company group chat within the hour, my face and all, captioned with a laughing emoji from one of the finance guys I hired myself. "The bank sees it too," Ethan said. I hadn't told a soul about the bank. I'm 68 years old. I made one mistake in 30 years, and I still had enough left in me not to give him the bigger show he clearly wanted. I took my jacket off the hook, folded it over my arm, and walked past every one of those employees toward the parking lot. Behind me, I heard him tell the room, "Somebody help him find his truck. He gets turned around sometimes." I sat in my truck in the Tulsa heat with the AC off, told myself I forgot how to turn it on. That's a lie. I just needed a minute where nobody could watch my hands shake. That's when my phone, my personal one, the one he hadn't gotten to yet, buzzed. Not a call, a text from a number I didn't know. "Mr. Bradley, we need to talk before your son closes the Simmons deal. It's not what you think." I sat there staring at that message a long time before I figured out who'd sent it. If you've ever been pushed out of something you built by your own blood, stick around. Rodney's not finished. Subscribe now because you don't want to miss where this goes. I didn't answer the text right away. I drove. Didn't even decide where, just drove until I ended up at a diner off 71st Street in Broken Arrow, 20 minutes from the dealership. Far enough that nobody from work would walk in and see me sitting alone looking like exactly what I was. I ordered coffee I didn't drink and read that message about 6 more times. "We need to talk before your son closes the Simmons deal. It's not what you think." I texted back one word. "Who is this?" 20 minutes later, a woman walked in and sat down across from me without asking. Maybe 50. Tired eyes, folder under her arm like she'd been carrying it around all day trying to work up the nerve. I recognized her. Denise Colton. She used to run our finance office before Ethan restructured, which is the word he used when he let go of anybody who'd known me longer than he had. "You don't remember me leaving. Nobody told you. Ethan said I quit." "You didn't quit." "I got walked out by security in March, 2 days after I asked him why the Simmons paperwork had your signature on documents you were never in the building to sign." I sat with that a second. My hands weren't shaking anymore. Something else was happening now. Something colder. "I need to see it," I said.
She slid the folder across the table like she'd been waiting a long time to hand it to somebody. Loan applications, vendor agreements, my signature at the bottom of 3 of them, dated a week I know for a fact I was in Springfield visiting my late wife's sister for her birthday. I remember that trip. I remember it because it was the last good week I had before the chest pain started. "That's not my signature," I said. "I mean, it looks like mine. It isn't." "I know," Denise said. "I used to process your expense reports for 9 years. I know your handwriting better than I know my own kids. Somebody's been practicing." I asked her the only question that mattered. Why? She looked around the diner before she answered, like the word itself was dangerous. "Because if the bank thinks you personally guaranteed loans you never guaranteed, and then Ethan turns around and shows the bank a doctor's note saying you're not competent to have signed anything recently, guess who they come after for the money, and guess who gets to look like the responsible one who caught it just in time?" It took me a second to follow all the way through what she was saying, and I hated myself a little for needing the second. 3 months ago, that math would have been instant. "He's setting me up to eat the debt and using my own health as the reason nobody will believe me when I say it wasn't me." That's what it looks like from where I'm sitting. I don't have proof of the second part. I've got proof of the first part, which is why I'm not in that building anymore. I asked her why she was telling me this now, after 4 months of silence. She looked down at her coffee. "Because I heard what happened this morning. Somebody sent me the video before lunch. She didn't apologize for that, and I didn't ask her to. 30 years, Mr. Bradley. You gave my husband a job when nobody else in this town would hire a man with his record. I wasn't going to sit home and watch them do that to you on a phone screen and say nothing." I didn't have a response ready for that. I just nodded, the same way I'd nodded walking out of my own dealership 2 hours ago, except this nod felt different. That one had been me swallowing something. This one felt like the first brick going back into a wall. "I need everything you've got, every document, and I need to know if there's anybody else who saw what you saw and left the way you left. 2 that I know of. 1 won't talk. He's scared. He's got a family. He doesn't want Ethan finding out he talked to you. The other might." She wrote a name on a napkin and slid it over. "Start there. Careful how you reach him. Ethan's got people watching more than you think." I asked her what that meant, watching. "I mean, somebody called my husband's job last week asking questions about me. Not the police, somebody private." She stood up, folder now in my hands instead of hers. "I have to go. I've got a new job now. I can't be seen doing this." I sat alone with the folder for a long time after she left, read every page twice, my name in ink I never put on paper, dated for days I could account for hour by hour if I had to. Then I turned the last page over and found something Denise either hadn't noticed or hadn't wanted to be the one to point out to me. A wire authorization. Dollar amount, 6 figures. Routing to an account I didn't recognize. 1 line at the bottom listing the internal approver. It wasn't Ethan's name on that line. It was my best friend of 30 years. The man who'd stood up at my wedding.
I stared at that name on the wire authorization for so long the coffee in front of me went cold enough that the diner waitress asked if she should heat it up. I told her no. I wasn't there for the coffee anymore. Walt Higgins, best man at my wedding, business partner on 3 separate ventures over the years, though only Bradley Auto Group ever made real money. Godfather to my daughter before she moved to Denver and stopped calling much. Man I trusted with the keys to my house when my wife was in her last weeks, because I couldn't be everywhere at once, and I needed somebody who'd treat the place like it was his own. 6 figures, routed to an account with no name I recognized, approved under his signature. I drove north to Owasso without calling ahead. Walt's got a lake house up there he retired to 2 years back. Told everybody he was done with the car business, wanted to fish and leave the stress to younger men. I remember being happy for him, genuinely happy.
That's the part that sat wrong in my stomach the whole drive, harder than the money did. He answered the door in a fishing vest, like he'd been expecting a delivery, not me. His face did something complicated when he saw who it was. Not surprise, exactly, more like a man watching a bill come due that he'd hoped would get lost in the mail. Rodney. He didn't invite me in right away. That told me plenty by itself. Denise Colton came to see me. I watched his face when I said the name. It flinched, just barely, at the corner of his eye. 30 years of watching a man across poker tables and negotiating tables teaches you to read the small stuff. "I don't know what you think you know," he said, "but you should sit down before you say anything else. I've got a wire authorization with your name on it, 6 figures, routed somewhere that isn't the company." He didn't deny it. That's what got me. 30 years, and he didn't even bother denying it to my face. He just sighed like I was the one being unreasonable and stepped back to let me in, and that sigh told me he'd rehearsed whatever he was about to say. "Sit down, Rodney, please." I didn't sit. Talk. He poured himself a drink he didn't offer me and finally turned around. "Ethan came to me 8 months ago, before your health scare, before any of it. He had a plan to modernize the company, buy out some of the older debt, and restructure under a new holding company so the bank exposure sat somewhere else. He needed a signer the bank already trusted. That's all I was, a signature they wouldn't question. You knew it wasn't real." He said, "I knew it was aggressive," which is the kind of word men like Walt use instead of the word they mean. "I didn't know he'd use your medical situation to cover it once things started looking bad on paper. I want you to believe that part." "But you kept signing," I said, "even after." He didn't answer that one directly, which was its own answer. "He told me you'd already agreed to step back. He told me you knew. I had no reason not to believe him, Rodney. He's your son. He's my son, and you let him make me look insane in front of 27 employees this morning." That landed. His jaw tightened. "I didn't know about this morning until an hour ago. I called him the second I heard. I told him that was too far." "Too far," I repeated. "Not wrong, too far." He didn't have an answer for that one either. I asked him the only question I'd actually driven up there to ask. "Where does the money go, Walt? The 6 figures, the account?" He was quiet long enough that I knew whatever he said next was the thing that mattered most in that whole conversation. "It's not one account," he said. "There's 4 of them, different names, different banks, all feeding the same place eventually. I only ever saw my piece of it. I don't know the whole picture, and I didn't want to know, because not knowing let me sleep at night telling myself I was just helping a young guy get a company off the ground." 4 accounts, I said. "That's not restructuring, Walt. That's a man moving money somewhere he doesn't want found." He looked at me for a long moment, and for the first time since I'd walked in, he looked like the man I used to know, instead of the one who'd just spent 5 minutes explaining his way around a betrayal. "There's a 5th one," he said, quietly. "I only found out about it last week. It's not in Ethan's name. It's not in mine." "Whose is it?" He walked to a drawer, pulled out a single folded bank statement, and set it on the table between us, like he needed the distance. I picked it up, read the name on the account twice to be sure I wasn't misreading it in bad light. It was my daughter's name, the one who'd stopped calling much after she moved to Denver.
I didn't sleep on the drive. I flew instead, because Denver's too far to think straight for 12 hours behind a wheel with that bank statement sitting in my jacket pocket like a stone. My daughter's name is Kayla. She left Tulsa 9 years ago after her mother passed, said she needed distance from a town that reminded her of hospital rooms. I understood that. I never fought her on it. What I didn't understand, sitting on that plane, was why her name was on an account tied to money moving out of my own company. She didn't know I was coming. I didn't want to give her time to prepare an answer. She opened the door of her apartment in workout clothes, hair still wet, and her face went through about 4 different things in 2 seconds when she saw me standing there. Surprise, something like guilt, then something that looked almost like relief, which confused me more than anything else that whole day. "Dad, what are you doing here?" I held up the statement instead of answering, didn't say a word, let her look at her own name printed on it. She went pale, sat down slow on the arm of her couch, like her legs had made the decision without asking her first. "Where did you get this?" "Walt gave it to me. Now I'm asking you." She was quiet a long time, long enough that I started building the worst version of this in my head, the version where my daughter had been in on it from the start, where the 2 people I trusted most after my late wife had spent months carving up what I'd built while I sat in doctors' offices getting my blood thinned. "It's not what you think," she said, and I told her that's exactly what the text message said that started all this, and she didn't find that funny at all. "Ethan called me in April," she said, "told me you were declining fast, that the doctors weren't optimistic, that he needed help protecting what was left of the company before creditors or, his word, vultures could get at it if something happened to you suddenly. He said opening an account in my name was the cleanest way to move some assets somewhere the bank couldn't freeze them if you passed." "If I passed?" I repeated. "That's what he told me, Dad. I believed it. You had had a stroke. Nobody would tell me anything straight. You know how you get. You don't like people worrying about you. So I didn't have anything to go on except what your own son was telling me on the phone." I believed that she believed it. That's the part that made it worse, not better. Ethan hadn't needed to convince a stranger. He'd needed to convince a scared daughter 3 states away who hadn't seen her father in over a year and had no way to check his story against anything real. "How much went through that account?" I asked. "I don't know exactly. I never touched it. I never even logged into it after the first setup call with his lawyer. I didn't want to know, Dad, if I'm honest. I didn't want to be part of managing your money while you were sick. It felt wrong just having my name on it." "But you kept your name on it." She flinched at that, and she should have. "Yes, I kept it on there because taking it off felt like giving up on you getting better. That's the truth, ugly as it is." I sat down across from her, and for the first time since the badge came off my belt in that showroom, I felt something other than anger or cold calculation. I felt old, genuinely old, the way Ethan had been trying to make the whole company believe I already was. "Kayla, I didn't have a stroke that put me anywhere near dying. I had a scare. I came back to work in 2 weeks. Your brother watched me freeze for 40 seconds in one meeting and used it to convince a room of my own employees I couldn't tell up from down anymore. Then, apparently, he used the same story on you 3 states away to get your name on paper for money that's now missing." Her hand went to her mouth. "Missing? What do you mean missing?" "I mean, Walt says there's 4 other accounts feeding somewhere, and yours makes 5, and none of us know where the 5th one Walt didn't set up leads, because Walt didn't set it up either. Somebody else did, using your name and trust the same way he used mine and Walt's." She was quiet a long moment, and I watched something change behind her eyes, watched 9 years of guilt about leaving Tulsa curdle into something closer to fury. "He used me," she said. "He used both of us, and he's been telling everyone at the company I abandoned the family. That's why he never mentions me. That's why nobody at the dealership even asks about me anymore." I told me you didn't call much because you didn't want to deal with a sick old man. I believed it because it sounded like something grief does to people. "I called every month for the first 2 years. He told me you didn't want to talk, said it was easier for both of us if I stopped trying for a while." Her voice cracked on that last part, and I understood then that Ethan hadn't just been stealing money. He'd been rewriting the whole family's understanding of each other, one convenient lie at a time, to whoever was 3 states away and couldn't check. "I need your login for that account.
Tonight, before anybody thinks to close it. She was already reaching for her laptop when her phone rang on the coffee table between us. She looked at the screen and went still. It was Ethan.
She let it ring 3 times before she looked at me for permission. I nodded. She put it on speaker. Hey, so did Dad show up there or not? Because his truck's still sitting in the lot from yesterday and nobody's heard. Ethan stopped mid-sentence. I could hear it hit him, the silence on our end lasting half a second too long. Kayla? He's here, she said, flat, no performance in it. A pause, then careful, like a man choosing his footing on ice. Okay, good. I've been worried. Is he doing okay? You know how he gets, wandering off without telling anybody. Stop, she said. I have the statement, Ethan. Dad has it too. Walt gave it to him. The silence that time lasted a full 3 seconds, long enough that I understood, finally and completely, that everything after this moment was going to be about him managing the damage instead of managing me. I can explain all of that, he said. His voice had changed already, dropped the concerned son register for something flatter, more careful. It's not what it looks like. That's what everybody keeps telling me, I said, speaking for the first time. Funny how many things aren't what they look like. Dad, a beat. I did what I had to do to protect the company from bad decisions you were making. That account, the loans, all of it, it was containment. You want to sit there and pretend you were fit to keep running Bradley Auto after that meeting, after the doctors? The doctors cleared me 2 weeks after my scare. You know that. You were in the room when they said it. Optics mattered, Dad. The bank doesn't care what a doctor says in a private room. They care what the board sees. I did what was necessary. You forged my signature, I said. You had Walt move money through 5 accounts, one of them your sister's own, using a story about my health that wasn't true. That's not containment, son. That's theft. And you built a cover story out of me being sick so nobody would believe me when I said so. He didn't deny it. Not one word of denial, same as Walt hadn't denied it. Just a long breath on the line and then, quieter, "What do you want, Dad? You want me arrested? You want to blow up the company over this? Because that's what happens if you take this anywhere. Everybody loses. Employees lose their jobs. Kayla's aim's on paperwork too, remember? You drag me down, you drag her down with me." I looked at Kayla. Her jaw was set in a way that reminded me exactly of her mother. "He just threatened me to get to you," she said quietly, to me, not to the phone. "Did you hear that? He just threatened me." "I heard it," I said. I picked the phone up off the table, took it off speaker, put it to my ears so it was just the two of us. "Ethan, here's what's going to happen. Tomorrow morning, I'm flying back to Tulsa. I'm bringing Denise's documents, Walt's statement, and your sister's account records to the family attorney. Not the company one, a personal one, somebody you've never met and can't call ahead of time. You're going to have the chance to make this right before it goes to the bank and before it goes to the board. That's more of a chance than you gave me on that showroom floor in front of 27 people. Dad, listen, I'm not done. If you try to move another dollar out of any of those accounts before I land, I go straight to the bank's fraud division instead of the attorney. Your choice which version of tomorrow you want." I hung up before he could answer. My hand wasn't shaking. I noticed that, actually. Noticed it the way you notice weather changing. Kayla stared at me like she was seeing something she hadn't expected. "You're not going to the police first?" "I'm giving him one chance to sit across a table like a man and account for what he did. He didn't give me that. I'm not him." I looked at her. "But I need you on a plane with me tomorrow. Not for him, for you. Your name's on that paperwork, and you deserve to be the one who explains what you knew and when, instead of him explaining it for you." She nodded, already reaching for her laptop to book the flight. We landed in Tulsa the next afternoon. The board meeting Ethan called that evening, trying to get ahead of us, trying to spin it before I could speak. He stood at the head of the same table where he'd taken my badge 2 days earlier,
and he didn't get more than a few sentences into whatever he'd prepared before I walked in with Kayla beside me and Denise's folder in my hand. I didn't yell. I didn't need to. I laid the documents on the table the way I once would have laid out a good deal, one at a time, and let the board read each page in silence, while Ethan stood there with nothing left to perform for anybody. Walt showed up 20 minutes later, on his own, and told the board the truth without me having to ask him twice. Said he was done covering for a young man's ambition with an old man's signature. That was the closest thing to an apology I ever got from him, and honestly, I didn't need more than that. The board voted that night. Ethan was out by morning, the fraud in hands of people whose job it actually is to untangle it, and my name cleared off every piece of paper he'd put it on without asking. I didn't feel like celebrating. I felt tired, the good kind of tired, the kind you feel after a long job finally done right. Kayla stayed in Tulsa another week helping straighten out her own name in all of it, and for the first time in 9 years, she called me the next Sunday just to talk, no reason attached to it at all. I still run Bradley Auto Group, slower than I used to, more careful than I used to be, but it's mine, honestly mine, built on paper that finally says the truth.